The photograph emerged during the 2023 renovation of the historic Ashford County Courthouse in rural Virginia. Construction workers discovered a sealed metal box behind a cornerstone containing documents and photographs preserved as a time capsule during the building's 1908 dedication. Among these items was a large formal portrait labeled "The Caldwell Family, November 1907", showing a prominent local judge with his wife and 4 children posed on the steps of their Victorian home. When county archivist Dr. Emily Richards received the time capsule contents for cataloging, she initially categorized the Caldwell portrait as a typical formal family photograph of the Edwardian era. Judge William Caldwell had been a significant figure in local history, serving on the county court from 1895 until his death in 1923. His descendants remained influential in the region, with several still practicing law in the same courthouse, where the photograph had been hidden for over a century. It wasn't until Dr. Richards began the high-resolution digitization process that she noticed something unusual about the image. While Judge Caldwell, his wife Eleanor, and their 3 older children presented the formal, composed expressions typical of early 20th century portraiture, the youngest child, a boy about 4 years old, identified as Thomas Caldwell, appeared markedly different. His small hands, barely visible at his sides, showed unusual positioning with fingers splayed at unnatural angles. More notably, his facial features displayed subtle but unmistakable differences from his siblings: a slightly flattened nasal bridge, distinctive epicanthal folds around his eyes, and a mouth held slightly open. To a modern medical eye, these characteristics are immediately recognizable. Dr. Richards noted in her initial assessment, Thomas Caldwell displays the typical facial and physical features associated with Down syndrome, though this condition would not be widely understood or formally diagnosed during his lifetime. This observation transformed an ordinary historical photograph into a remarkable document of disability history in early 20th century America, prompting Dr. Richards to investigate how a child with Down syndrome appeared in a prominent family's formal portrait during an era when such children were typically hidden from public view. Dr. Richards began her investigation by examining official records concerning the Caldwell family during the early 1900s. Census documents from 1900 listed Judge William Caldwell, 42, his wife Eleanor, 38, and their 3 older children, Margaret, 12, William Jr., 10, and Henry, 7. The 1910 census added Thomas Caldwell, listed as age 6, to the household. His birth certificate, located in county records, confirmed his birth on March 15, 1904, making him approximately 3.5 years old in the November 1907 photograph. School enrollment records showed Margaret, William Jr., and Henry all attending the prestigious Ashford Academy, while Thomas never appeared in any educational records, not unusual for the period when children with intellectual disabilities were rarely provided formal education. Parish records from St. Paul's Episcopal Church showed Thomas's baptism in April 1904. But unlike his siblings, there were no subsequent records of Sunday school attendance or confirmation. The documentary evidence presents a mixed picture, Dr. Richards explained to her research team. Thomas Caldwell's existence was not concealed in official records, yet his public presence appears limited compared to his siblings, whose names regularly appeared in school honor rolls and church activities published in the Ashford County Gazette. Medical records from the era were sparse, but Dr. Richards discovered annual household expense ledgers maintained by Eleanor Caldwell, preserved in the family papers donated to the County Historical Society. Beginning in 1904, recurring entries noted payments to Dr. James Harrison, a local physician, for consultation regarding Thomas and special tonics and treatments, suggesting ongoing medical care for the child. Most revealing was Judge Caldwell's appointment diary from 1907, which included an entry on November 10th, one day before the photograph was taken, that read, "Photographer, family portrait for courthouse dedication. Confirm Thomas can participate." This suggested deliberate inclusion of the youngest child in this public documentation of the family, a decision that warranted further investigation given prevailing attitudes of the era. To confirm her initial observations about Thomas Caldwell's Appearance in the photograph. Dr. Richards consulted with Dr. Michael Saunders, a pediatric geneticist at the University of Virginia Medical Center. Using high-resolution digital scans of the photograph, Dr. Saunders conducted a detailed assessment of Thomas's visible physical characteristics. The child in this photograph displays several classic phenotypic features consistent with trisomy 21, what we now call Down syndrome, Dr. Saunders confirmed after careful analysis. The facial characteristics are quite distinctive. The slightly up-slanted palpebral fissures or eye openings, epicanthal folds, somewhat flattened midface, and the position of the tongue visible in the slightly open mouth. The hand positioning, though partially obscured, also shows the characteristic single palmar crease on his right hand. Dr. Saunders explained that while Down syndrome as a chromosomal condition was not understood in 1907, the distinctive physical appearance had been clinically recognized since John Langdon Down's formal description of the condition in 1866. During the early 1900s, such children were typically classified under terms like Mongolism or Mongolian idiocy, terminology now recognized as both inaccurate and inappropriate, but common in medical literature of that era. What makes this photograph remarkable is not just the clear documentation of a child with Down syndrome, Dr. Saunders noted, but the fact that he is included in a formal family portrait intended for public display. In this era, such children were frequently institutionalized or kept from public view due to social stigma and misunderstanding about their condition. Further analysis of Thomas's appearance in the photograph revealed that he was well-nourished and properly dressed in clothing similar to his brother Henry's attire, suggesting attentive care. His hair was neatly cut and combed, and while his expression differed from his siblings, with a more open, less composed countenance, he had clearly been prepared for this formal portrait with the same attention given to the other children. This photograph provides rare visual evidence of a child with Down syndrome being integrated into family life during a period when institutional segregation was the common response to developmental disabilities, Dr. Saunders concluded. It represents an unusual approach to disability for the early 20th century. Dr. Richards' investigation took a significant turn when she gained access to Judge William Caldwell's private papers, recently donated to the Virginia Historical Society by his great-granddaughter. Among these materials were the judge's personal correspondence, legal writings, and a private journal maintained from 1900 to 1923, offering unprecedented insight into his thoughts and family life. Entries from 1904, following Thomas's birth, revealed a man grappling with unexpected challenges. On March 20, 1904, he wrote, "Dr. Harrison confirms our concerns about the infant. He believes Thomas exhibits the characteristics of Mongolian idiocy, though he assures us many such children survive and can learn simple tasks." Eleanor wept upon hearing this assessment, but I find myself determined that this child will have every opportunity we can provide, regardless of the limitations nature has imposed. A subsequent entry from April 1904 demonstrated the judge's awareness of common practices regarding such children. Received a letter from Dr. Whitaker at the state asylum suggesting Thomas would be better served in their specialized facility. I cannot fault his professional opinion, but having observed these institutions during my judicial duties, I cannot consign my son to such an existence. Eleanor agrees we must keep him home with us, despite the challenges this may present to our position in society. Most revealing was an entry from November 1907, directly addressing the family portrait. Much discussion regarding the courthouse dedication photograph. Some colleagues intimated discreetly that Thomas might be excluded for the sake of appropriate public presentation. I find such suggestions repugnant. If this image is to represent my legacy as a jurist, it must represent my complete family. History shall see us as we truly are, Thomas included. Eleanor supports this decision despite her natural concerns about public scrutiny. The judge's writings revealed a progressive attitude unusual for his era, perhaps informed by his legal perspective. In a draft speech from 1910, he wrote, "Justice cannot exist where we conceal those deemed different or inconvenient. As I have maintained in my household, so too must we maintain in our society, that all human life deserves recognition, protection, and dignity under law. These private writings confirmed that Thomas's inclusion in the family portrait represented a deliberate choice rather than an oversight, a statement of principle from a jurist known for his sometimes controversial independence on the bench. Dr. Richards discovered valuable insights in the extensive correspondence of Eleanor Caldwell, preserved along with her husband's papers. Letters between Eleanor and her sister in Richmond from 1904 through 1915 chronicled the family's experience, raising Thomas and navigating social expectations regarding his condition. In a letter dated June 1904, when Thomas was 3 months old, Eleanor wrote, "The baby's condition becomes more apparent as he grows. Our physician has been kind but frank about what we might expect. William remains steadfastly optimistic, insisting, 'Thomas will find his place in this world,' while I confess to moments of despair about his future. Margaret has proven a surprising blessing, showing natural tenderness toward her little brother and asking thoughtful questions about his differences." By 1906, Eleanor's letters reflected adjusted expectations and developing family dynamics. Thomas progresses in his own manner, slower than the other children were, but making strides nonetheless. He now walks, though unsteadily, and makes his desires known through gestures and simple sounds. William Jr. has taken to reading to him in the evenings, though I suspect this is partly to delay his own bedtime. Henry remains somewhat distant. I believe he senses the reactions of other children when they visit, and Thomas is present. A letter from October 1907, shortly before the photograph, addressed social complications. "We attended services at St. Paul's yesterday, all 6 of us together. Thomas was well behaved, but I noticed the glances, some curious, some pitying, some disapproving. Mrs. Hollingsworth suggested afterward that I might find it easier to leave Thomas with his nurse during public functions. William overheard and responded that our family attends church complete or not at all. His position at the court affords him liberties in defying convention that other fathers might not risk." Most poignantly, Eleanor wrote to her sister the day after the family portrait was taken. The photographer was patient beyond expectation. While the older children maintained perfect stillness through several exposures, Thomas struggled to remain composed. Rather than showing frustration, the photographer spoke gently to him, even producing a small mechanical toy to capture his attention between attempts. When William explained this photograph would be sealed in the courthouse cornerstone, the man took exceptional care to ensure Thomas was presented well. I only hope future generations who might someday view this image will see beyond his differences to the beloved child we know. These maternal observations confirmed that Thomas was an integrated family member despite the social challenges his condition presented during this era. To understand how the Caldwell family's approach to Thomas fit within their community, Dr. Richards examined local newspapers, medical records, and institutional documents from early 20th century Ashford County. These sources revealed the prevailing attitudes and practices regarding developmental disabilities during this period. The Ashford County Gazette rarely mentioned individuals with disabilities except in articles promoting fundraising for the state. Asylum for Feeble-Minded Children, located about 70 miles from Ashford. A 1905 article describing the asylum characterized it as a modern, humane facility where unfortunate children receive appropriate care away from the difficulties and disappointments they would face in ordinary society. County Medical Society. Minutes from 1903 included a presentation by Dr. Edwin Marshall on the management of mongoloid children, which recommended institutional placement as the most compassionate approach for both the affected child and their family. The minutes noted that Judge Caldwell, present as a guest speaker on legal matters, had questioned this conclusion publicly, an unusual challenge to medical authority for the era. Records from the state asylum showed that between 1900 and 1910, 17 children from Ashford County were admitted with diagnoses similar to Thomas's condition. The admission forms typically cited reasons such as family unable to provide specialized care, or presence of normal siblings requiring parental attention. None were from families of the Caldwell's social standing, suggesting that economic resources and social power influenced decisions about institutionalization. Church records from St. Paul's Episcopal revealed that Reverend Thomas Woodward, the pastor during this period, had studied briefly at a seminary in New York that advocated more progressive approaches to disability based on emerging theories of child development. His sermons occasionally referenced God's special children and the divine purpose in human difference, theological framing that might have supported the Caldwells' decision to raise Thomas at home. Most revealing was the guest registry from the Caldwell home, which showed regular social gatherings continuing after Thomas's birth, contrary to the common practice of families withdrawing from society when a child with a visible disability was kept at home. Several entries included notations like "met youngest son" or "Thomas present at dinner," suggesting he was not hidden during social functions hosted by the family. Together, these sources indicated that while the Caldwells' approach to Thomas's condition defied local norms, certain community elements, particularly their church and the judge's professional standing, provided some support for their unconventional choices. Dr. Richards' research identified the photographer of the Caldwell family portrait as Robert Sullivan, who operated Sullivan's Photographic Studio in Ashford from 1895 to 1927. Sullivan had been commissioned to create several portraits for the courthouse cornerstone, including images of the county commissioners, the construction team, and prominent local families. Sullivan's business records, preserved by his granddaughter and now housed in the County Historical Society, included appointment books and client notes that provided insight into the Caldwell family session. The entry for November 11, 1907 noted, "Caldwell family portrait, judge's residence, 11 a.m., Courthouse Cornerstone Commission. Note, youngest child requires special consideration." More revealing was Sullivan's personal notebook, where he recorded technical challenges and solutions from significant photographic assignments. His entry regarding the Caldwell session was unusually detailed. Family of 6, including young boy with Mongolian features. Judge specifically requested all children be included, emphasizing this child should be presented with dignity. Required additional exposures due to boy's difficulty maintaining pose. Employed Martin Sullivan's assistant to stand behind camera, with mechanical bird to attract child's attention. Adjusted composition to allow mother to rest hand near boy for stability without appearing to restrain him. Sullivan added a personal observation. Judge explained photograph's public purpose yet insisted on boy's inclusion. Unusual request given nature of most family commissions where perfection in appearance is demanded. Charged standard rate despite additional plates and time required. Maintaining good relations with court officials essential to business. Sullivan's granddaughter, now elderly, shared additional context during an interview. "My grandfather mentioned the Caldwell portrait several times over the years. It stood out to him because most families with a child like that would either leave them out of formal portraits or not commission family photographs at all. He said Judge Caldwell was very specific about wanting a natural, dignified image of their youngest son, not posed to hide his condition but also not emphasizing it. Grandfather considered it one of his most challenging and meaningful commissions. Sullivan's records revealed that he created 2 versions of the portrait, one for the courthouse cornerstone and another for the family's private display. The family version, which has not survived, included several additional poses described as more informal groupings showing typical family interactions. This suggested the Caldwells wanted both a formal public record of their complete family and more natural representations of their family life, including Thomas. While Thomas Caldwell never appeared in formal school records, Dr. Richards discovered evidence of the family's educational efforts through household account books, correspondence, and journal entries. These sources revealed an unusual home-based approach to his development during an era when children with his condition typically received little educational attention. Household accounts beginning in 1906 showed regular payments to Miss Sarah Peabody, identified in Eleanor's correspondence as T's special teacher. Miss Peabody, research revealed, had trained briefly at the Massachusetts School for Idiotic and Feeble-Minded Youth, later renamed the Walter E. Fernald State School, where early methods of education for children with intellectual disabilities were being developed under the influence of pioneering educator Edouard Seguin. Eleanor's letters described Miss Peabody's methods. She brings fascinating materials, colored blocks, textured fabrics, pictures with simple stories. Thomas responds well to her methods, particularly activities involving music and movement. She focuses on practical skills rather than academic learning, explaining that developing his ability to care for himself holds more value than forcing traditional lessons upon him. Judge Caldwell's journal entries revealed his involvement in Thomas's education. Spent an hour with Thomas and his blocks this evening. Miss Peabody has shown us how repetition and patience yield gradual progress. He can now stack 6 blocks before they tumble, a small victory that brought him such delight that I found myself equally jubilant over this modest achievement. The family's financial records showed purchases of specialized educational materials from Boston and New York, picture books, simplified games, and what was described as Montessori materials, referring to the then novel educational approach developed by Italian educator Maria Montessori, whose methods were particularly applicable to children with developmental differences. Most significant was a letter from Judge Caldwell to Dr. Walter Fernald, superintendent of the Massachusetts school, dated 1908. While we have chosen to keep our son at home rather than seek institutional placement, we believe strongly in providing him educational opportunities suited to his capabilities. Any guidance your institution might provide regarding modern methods appropriate for home implementation would be greatly appreciated. Dr. Fernald's response, preserved among the judge's papers, was surprisingly supportive. Your commitment to your son's development within the family environment is unusual but not without merit. I have enclosed several instructional pamphlets developed for our staff that might guide your home efforts. The consistency of family attachment may indeed provide advantages that institutional efficiency cannot replicate. These records demonstrated that Thomas received educational attention unusual for a child with his condition during this era, reflecting his family's resources, connections, and progressive approach to his development. To place the Caldwell family's approach to Thomas in proper historical context, Dr. Richards collaborated with Dr. Catherine Montgomery, a historian specializing in disability history at Georgetown University. Together they analyzed how the family's decisions reflected and departed from early 20th century norms regarding developmental disability. The period between 1880 and 1920 saw the rapid growth of institutions for individuals with intellectual disabilities across America. Dr. Montgomery explained, "This institutionalization movement was driven by several converging factors. The emerging eugenics movement, with its emphasis on removing defective individuals from the general population, the professionalization of medicine and psychology, creating new authority over disability, and changing family structures as urbanization reduced the extended family networks that might have shared caregiving responsibilities. Statistics from Virginia showed that institutional populations of children with conditions similar to Thomas's increased over 300% between 1900 and 1910. Medical textbooks and child-rearing manuals from the period almost universally recommended institutional placement, characterizing it as the modern scientific approach, benefiting both the child and family. What makes the Caldwell case so remarkable, Dr. Montgomery noted, is that they had both the social standing and financial resources to easily secure institutional placement for Thomas. Indeed, this would have been expected of a family in their position. Yet they deliberately chose a different path. Their decision to include him in this public formal representation of their family constitutes an even more significant departure from social norms. Research into similar cases from the period revealed that when wealthy or prominent families had children with conditions like Thomas's, 3 approaches predominated: immediate institutional placement with minimal family contact, home-based seclusion where the child was kept entirely private, often known only to household staff and immediate family, or sending the child to live with distant relatives in rural areas. The Caldwell's approach, raising Thomas at home while acknowledging him publicly, represented a 4th, highly unusual path. Judge Caldwell's legal background may have informed his perspective, Dr. Montgomery suggested. The early 1900s saw emerging legal questions about the rights and status of individuals with disabilities. As a jurist, he would have been exposed to these evolving discussions in a way most parents would not, potentially influencing his approach to Thomas's place in the family and society. The historical context highlighted how truly exceptional the Caldwell family's decisions were, and how remarkable the resulting photograph remains as documentation of an approach to disability that defied the prevailing scientific and social wisdom of the era. Through extensive research across multiple archives, Dr. Richards gradually assembled a picture of Thomas Caldwell's life beyond the 1907 photograph. County records, family papers, and medical documents revealed that Thomas remained with his family throughout his life, never experiencing the institutional placement so common for individuals with his condition during this era. The 1920 census listed Thomas, then 16, still residing in the family home. Judge Caldwell's journal entries from this period noted Thomas's continued development. He assists Eleanor with simple household tasks, takes great pride in feeding the birds in our garden, and has developed a remarkable memory for faces and names. His limitations remain evident, yet within the parameters of his understanding, he leads a life of purpose and connection. Medical records indicated that Thomas experienced the health complications common in individuals with Down syndrome during this period, including heart problems and increased susceptibility to respiratory infections. Dr. Harrison continued as his physician until the doctor's retirement in 1925, after which Thomas's care was transferred to a younger doctor who had trained at Johns Hopkins, where more progressive approaches to developmental disabilities were emerging. After Judge Caldwell's death in 1923, Eleanor and Thomas continued to live in the family home, with financial support established through the judge's carefully structured will. Eleanor's correspondence with her children during this period frequently mentioned Thomas's daily activities and continued place in family gatherings. When Eleanor died in 1937, responsibility for Thomas's care transferred to his sister Margaret, who had become a teacher and never married. County property records showed that Margaret and Thomas lived together in a smaller home near the original family residence until Thomas's death in 1942 at age 38, a relatively long life for an individual with Down syndrome in the pre-antibiotic era, when many died in childhood or early adulthood from complications related to the condition. Most revealing about Thomas's place in the family was his burial location. Cemetery records confirmed he was interred in the Caldwell family plot with the same type of headstone as his parents and siblings, bearing the simple inscription, Thomas Caldwell, beloved son and brother, 1904-1942. Dr. Richards located one final piece of evidence about Thomas's legacy in a 1938 speech given by his brother William Jr., who followed his father into law and eventually became a state legislator. Advocating for improved conditions in state institutions for individuals with disabilities, he stated, "My perspective on this issue is not merely theoretical. My brother Thomas has lived his entire life as a valued member of our family despite having been born with limitations that many consider cause for separation and seclusion. While our family had resources many lack, the principle remains. Dignity and inclusion benefit both the individual and the community. Our public institutions should aspire to provide the same respect and opportunity that families at their best can offer." When Dr. Richards completed her research, the Ashford County Historical Society featured the Caldwell family portrait in a special exhibition titled Visible Lives: Disability in Early 20th Century Virginia. The photograph, showing Thomas Caldwell standing among his family rather than hidden away, provided rare visual evidence of a family that chose a path of inclusion during an era defined by separation and institutionalization, challenging both historical and contemporary assumptions about the past treatment of individuals with developmental disabilities.